Welcome back to Client Stories with DNAngels. My name is Laura Olmsted, and this is Margaret's story. At nearly 80 years old, Margaret never imagined that a simple DNA test would change everything she thought she knew about her life. For decades, Margaret believed she knew exactly who she was, the only child of devoted parents who had both passed too soon. Her mother had tragically died from embolism just 9 days after Margaret was born, leaving her father to raise her alone. Despite the challenges, he never abandoned her. He chose to keep her, raising her with love and devotion. Margaret treasured those years. He was her hero, protector, and guiding force. But then another tragedy struck. Margaret was just 17 years old when her father passed away, leaving her in the care of her paternal grandparents. Growing up without her mother and losing her father at such a young age left a deep void, one she thought she had learned to live with. Then decades later, a simple DNA test shattered everything she thought she knew. Like many, Margaret took a DNA test hoping to confirm her heritage and perhaps connect with distant relatives. She eagerly logged into her results, expecting to see familiar names from her father's side and her mother's side, but those names were nowhere to be found. Instead, she was met with an entirely unfamiliar set of relatives, strangers whose DNA matched hers, but whom she had never heard of before. Confused, Margaret began to realize the only possible explanation. The man who raised her was not her biological father. Her entire understanding of her identity had unraveled in an instant. Was her uncle her biological father? That's what Margaret asked herself. Given the time period and her mother's untimely passing, Margaret tried to piece together the possible truth. Her only logical guess was that her biological father could be her mother's brother, a man who had spent time with her mother while her husband was stationed overseas in the military. That realization was deeply unsettling. It was one thing to discover that the man she called Dad wasn't her biological father, but the idea that her uncle might be, that was painful and confusing. She needed to know the truth. Margaret reached out to DNAngels through our website, hoping for answers. The first step in our research was to use the Are Your Parents Related tool on GEDmatch, which determines whether a person's parents share a genetic connection, something that would indicate that her uncle was her father. The results? Negative. Margaret's uncle was not her biological father. This revelation brought an immense sense of relief. I don't know why she thought that he could be the only man, but we don't, when we're upset by things like that, we don't, I think rationally. So it brought a sense of relief, but it also meant that her search wasn't over. If her uncle wasn't her father, then who was it? The next step was to analyze Margaret's DNA matches and build her family tree from scratch. One high DNA match stood out. It was a woman who was either an aunt, a half-sibling, or a full niece. There was just one problem. This match used a cryptic alias on Ancestry, making it difficult to identify her. But we don't give up easily. We meticulously cross-referenced family connections and traced common ancestors. Two distinct family lines emerged. The Harper family, which we color-coded in blue, and the Sinclair family, which we color-coded in green. As you can tell from my stories, those are our go-to paternal colors, green and blue. Now, through careful research, we identified Margaret's biological grandparents, Jonathan Harper and Lillian Sinclair. They had 3 sons, all of whom were the right age to be Margaret's biological father. So which one was it? We investigated each of the 3 sons, and one stood out, William Harper. William had been married with a young child, but in 1953, tragedy struck. At just 31 years old, William died in a car accident. Could this be Margaret's father? The key to solving this mystery was in Margaret's high DNA match. After extensive research, we made a shocking discovery. Margaret's high DNA match was William Harper's daughter. This meant that Margaret wasn't an only child after all. It also meant that William Harper's daughter wasn't an only child. They both had a half-sister, each other. And even more incredible, her sister was alive. For almost 80 years, Margaret believed she was alone in this world. Now, in an instant, she had gained a sister. This realization was so overwhelming, For so long, she had grieved the loss of her parents, never imagining she might still have biological family out there. Even though she would never meet her biological father, finding her sister gave her a sense of belonging she had never known. Margaret reached out to her sister, hoping for a connection. Would she respond? Would she want to know her? When Margaret finally connected with her sister, their resemblance was undeniable. They didn't just share physical traits. They shared the same warmth, humor, and kindness. It was as if a missing piece of Margaret's soul had been reunited with her. It was as if a missing piece of Margaret's soul had been returned to her. While she would always love and honor the man who raised her, she could finally embrace the full truth of her origins. Margaret later wrote to us, reflecting on her journey. There is no way to put a price on what you've given me. Learning my uncle wasn't my father was an immense relief, but finding my sister, that was beyond anything I ever hoped for. My dad will always be my daddy, and when I visit his grave, the world feels right, because that's where he would want me to be. But William Harper, he is a part of me. I may never know the full story of how or why, but I do know this. I would not be me without him. I'm so grateful. And I'm grateful that DNAngels was the team that walked this journey with me. I can't tell you how much that touches my heart. This is why we do what we do. Margaret's story is proof that the truth always finds its way home. If you or someone you love is searching for answers, DNAngels is here to help. If you believe that everyone deserves to know where they came from, show your support by smashing that like button and leaving a pink heart in the comments so that Margaret knows that you're here on this journey with her and you fully support her right to know. And if you need help uncovering your biological truth, visit us at www.DNAangels.org. That's DNAngels.org. We spell our name with one word, one A. Because your right to know your true biological parentage is more important than someone else's secrets. Until next time, friends, have a great week.